Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Season 8 of Stand Up and Stand Out para te y desde. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Nikki Green. Throughout the past 8 seasons, we have worked to showcase some incredible guests with eclectic backgrounds so you can see that success comes in many shapes and sizes. On our path to episode 100, we have some new inspiring interviews to celebrate this important milestone of our podcast. As I add retreats into my coaching program, I'm looking forward to meeting more of you in person and connecting with you beyond the podcast. I hope you enjoy Season 8, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and comments on the fascinating topics we will cover with each new guest. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the amazing episode of Stand Up and Stand Out para te y desde. We have a wonderful friend who I've gotten to know over the last year, and I can't wait to get you guys to meet her too. So welcome, Elisa, to the show.
Thanks, Nikki. Super excited to be here. Wanting to be on the show. I was like, oh yeah, we got to get in each other's podcast. Let's do that.
I love that we can pod swap now too. It's really been kind of this cool benefit of I was always doing so much work to put my show together. And I was like, oh, I might get to be on somebody else's show too without doing all that effort of pitching, but really continue that connection and help supporting each other's business. And you've got such a cool story. I was like, oh, we've got to have her on so we can learn more. Why don't we start there? Why don't you share a little bit about your career journey, some of those twists and turns? And obviously this season is about milestones. And what are some of those big milestones that helped you kind of decide your paths throughout the way?
When I graduated high school and was I really had no idea at all what I wanted to do. And so went to college and was took every ology that I could, just trying to figure out what do I want to do? And then after a while, I was like, I don't want to graduate with some bachelor's degree in philosophy or something. I'm like, what is that going to do for me? I need something that's going to get me a job now. So that kind of got me eventually to having an office job. And it was always just an office job, whatever. And then I moved to Europe and I lived in the Netherlands. I lived in Amsterdam. And I had an amazing manager. She was actually American living in Paris and I was in Amsterdam. And she was like, oh, I think you'd be a really good project manager. I was like, oh, okay. So she kind of started me on that journey. And she was really amazing. I have to thank her for that. And then I moved to London, England from Amsterdam. And that's when I really I did a little bit of project management before, but then that's when I really started to get into it. And I was super lucky to get a job at the BBC, which was pretty awesome. Yeah. And it was because BBC it was like the BBC, but then they also have BBC Worldwide, which is more their private arm of the company. And so I worked with them in the project management office. And there was a course that they were doing that was a personal development course that I got to take with a man named Nicholas Bate. And that was my introduction to personal development. And he talked about affirmations and they kind of got into that little world a little bit. And I was like, this is kind of cool. I like this. I don't even remember how it happened. I don't remember how I found this. I don't know if it was just searching on the internet or looking about coaching, but I found there was this coaching academy and they were doing an introduction to coaching weekend in London. And so I signed up for it. And that was, I think, one of the big milestones was that I understood understood the power of coaching and just how amazing it was. And they taught us how to listen properly and how to really ask really good questions. Right. And I remember they were getting us there was all these exercises and we did exercises ourselves as well. Right. In the wheel of life and all that kind of stuff. And then they actually got us to practice coaching. And I was sitting with a woman and we had questions to ask. And it was just listen, answer these questions, listen, answer these questions. And that's all I did. And I was just really patient with her. And she had this transformation, light bulb moment. She was at the end, she's like, wow, thank you so much. How did you do that? And I was like, I just answered the questions. But it was so amazing how she had this, it was this turning point in her life from that coaching. I was like, this is incredible. What can I do with this? And so that's actually where I started my business was when I lived in London. And, but I started more because I was running because I know that we both have that in common. And so I was like, oh, maybe I could help people just general health and having running as part of that, people sort of teaching people how to run. And I got a bunch of different sporting things. I even did some career coaching. But then when I moved back to Vancouver, I I kind of put that on the back burner because I really like my project management career really started to take off. And I was like, climbing the ladder and all that in corporate. Then the pandemic hit and, everybody had time to think about stuff in the pandemic. And that's when I was like, like that coaching thing that I haven't really thought about. It's kind of like been niggling in the back of my mind. And as they say, right, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And that's what kind of happened. So I was just sort of did some searches and then found the Health Coach Institute. And that's where I kind of got my certifications and started my whole coaching path. But yeah, that was like the first big milestone was that just the power of it.
Well, and it's so interesting, again, kind of parallels in career and timelines as we've kind of got to know each other. Similar things that happen. And I think some of us are having these same kind of parallel moments where we're kind of finishing school. We're not quite sure what we're doing there. I did finance because I was good at math. Like I literally had no excuse as to why and I needed a job. I had 2 college degrees to pay for, a pricey wedding, that I had just done and all this stuff. And I just was like, I got to get something. And I just never really loved it. And when I started really leading, when I started taking more courses to learn all these different things, project management, see what the engineers were up to, I was like, oh, like there's all these cool things we could be doing. I don't have to sit here and make journal entries all day. Like this is not going to fulfill me. And I think that's too why most of us gravitate toward coaching too, is even when we do kind of move up the channel, like up the ladder in our corporate jobs, we don't always get the chance to actually mentor people. Like that part goes so quickly and we're kind of just stuck there in the weeds with people and dealing with KPIs and, what people want above. And especially in the project management space, the organization I loved, the achievement I loved, but like, did we really get to do a lot of like really value add enhancements that we thought were cool? Probably not most of it. And I love your story too, because, I love to travel and I've been a lot of places, but, Amsterdam always has a fond place in my heart and just imagining living there. I almost moved there as part of one of my first jobs out of school. We could have ended up hanging out, but
and that'd been hilarious.
Yeah. And then my first business was called Purple Turtle Events. And I hosted triathlons and helped coach beginner athletes. And so, so kind of all these beginner kind of places where we start our coaching kind of way early on before we have this business that we have today and all those experiences and things that kind of lead you into what you do now. So let's talk a little bit about now. I love what you do because it's such an important piece that I think many entrepreneurs are missing in their business. They're kind of trying to get to the end state without taking the steps to get there. And so let's talk a little bit about your current business and how you help people.
Yeah. So my current business, I'm a launch strategist and planner. And so I work with coaches and I help them on the actual like doing this tactical part, like getting stuff done of their business. And I think that a lot of coaches, they just want to coach or they love the creation. They love creating the program and they want to take people through it and they want to help people. But there's so much more to a business than just the coaching itself. And I think that's kind of the sort of journey that coaches go on is that they like learn how to coach, but then you also have to learn how to be a business owner. And then when you do all the business stuff, that allows you to do the coaching. Right. So like you need to kind of have them both. And I think also like a lot of us take business courses and we have business coaches and they teach us all the hows and all the things to do. But a lot of coaches don't actually do it in the end. And there's so much to do and it can be so overwhelming. And so they know what to do. They know how to do it, but it's actually getting it done. And so that's what I really work with them. And I always start with a plan. Of course, being a project manager, I love planning, but I think that that's something that people miss. They don't really think about like, okay, what are all the things I need to do and how long is that going to take? And like, when can I launch my group coaching program or whatever it might be? It might even be a book, a podcast, even a one-on-one coaching program, whatever it might be, whatever it is that they're launching. And so that's where I come in. And I'm like, okay, I've already got every single check, like this huge checklist of every single step. Like it's giant. Yeah. And as soon as they see it and they're like, well, it's a lot of stuff to do. You don't have to do all of it. You can do some of it. It's okay. Like you choose because we're all in different stages of our business. And some people, like one of my clients was like, well, right now I'm feeling so overwhelmed. I don't want to do the JV partner thing. I'm like, okay, we'll just skip that part. You know what? But it's there for next time. So, next launch you do, like you can maybe incorporate that once you get these other wheels spinning. And that's really what I try to help people with is like create systems in place. So it's like rinse and repeatable. And even things like their back end systems, like getting that organized, having a filing structure, like every time you do something, like, okay, it just goes here and I know where it lives and I can find it super easily. So I'm not searching for things forever, having to recreate them and just wasting so much time. So yeah, I kind of help them with that and really just getting into those motions. And so it runs more smoothly. And at the beginning, it's like a little bit difficult trying to figure out what those systems are, but I work with them on that. And then also hold their hands. I kind of become this like accountability coach where it's like, okay, my plan, if you were to do everything on the plan that I have, it's 260 lines long, tasks long. It's giant. And so, it's like that can be super overwhelming. You're like, oh my gosh, I have to do 260 things over the next like 2 months. Like, right. Okay. So what I help them with is like, okay, don't think about the whole 260. Think about this 10 or 20 right now. We're going to focus on these this week and trust the process and trust the plan we put together that everything will get done when it needs to get done. But right now, just focus on this and then we'll focus on the next things the other week. And so I kind of make sure that they actually do it and follow up with them. And I think that's kind of key as well, where, I just actually like, did you do it? And like, why didn't you do it? And, maybe sometimes there's a blocker, sometimes life happens and that's okay. You can always adjust and be flexible. But you always want to have the forward progress or else the program will never get out there and they won't be able to help the people that they want to help. Yeah, that's kind of where I come in. And I love it because especially the strategy part of it, because as we go through my plan, I just ask them questions like, oh, do you want to do this? Have you thought about this? Like, what do you want to promote? And then they're just like, oh, I haven't really thought about that. And we actually have conversations throughout the whole thing. It's almost like this kind of 3-hour conversation one-on-one. And it's really fun because I feel like us solopreneurs, we don't do that with anybody. We don't talk about the minutia of things or how we make decisions or even just talk about something like, great, like what day would be best to have my webinar? Like, is it better on a weekday? I'm like, well, who's your audience? Because maybe they prefer evenings. Maybe they prefer Sundays. Maybe they prefer, a Monday morning if they're an entrepreneur or something like that. So just kind of talking it through, which I think is my favorite part of it. It's just that kind of talking through, figuring it all out.
And I think that's what so many people are missing is, and we've talked about this, like a lot of people jump into these very high ticket programs and they're not going to get this kind of service. That it's kind of, they're just floating in the deep end with the sea of a bunch of other people that don't know what's going on. And maybe they get an hour of kind of group coaching or a recording. And so I love that you're really helping them be more accountable, and where you and I have a lot of parallels to how we help people. Because we have this project management background, like if you sent me that spreadsheet, I would just fall in love because I'm a very overly organized person and I love spreadsheets. It was funny. I was at this retreat in Dallas with a bunch of other entrepreneur women. And one lady was showing all these spreadsheets. She was a sales coach and everyone was like about to cry. Like they wanted nothing to do with it. And I was like, that was the best presentation. And so the first time I saw one of your spreadsheets, I was also in love. So I was like, no, this we're kindred spirits right here. Mine usually has a lot of color. Hers has a lot of structure. So if you're looking for help with structure and accountability, it's definitely this is the way to go. And one thing that the way, we talked about this too, because we have these parallels with running, and I know you've got a marathon coming up, is I think running training, especially for something as long as a marathon, you have to be organized. You have to basically use project management. And you don't go out and run 26 miles or 42 kilometers on the very first day. You break it down into small, manageable pieces. So maybe talk about that, how you kind of use your project management skills too to stay on track for your marathon training and other events you do.
Yeah, that's pretty much the first thing that I do is there are definitely plans out there of the training schedule of how to do that. So I get my hand I've had them from before. So I look at what I did before. And that is the first thing I do. I'm like, okay, what weeks do I need to run with things? And you kind of build it up, right? Like each week, you maybe add a few kilometers or a few miles until you get to like sort of a top point, and then you need to taper and come back down again. And so planning that out, and it can be like 3 or 4 months of training. And then also figuring out other workouts that you want to have and when it might be, good to do things. Like we do a workout together on Monday mornings, which is great because then I do a run, more of like a faster kind of tempo run on Wednesdays, which is perfect of the spread because I'm usually sore after the workout. So by the time I run on Wednesday, I can actually move my legs again. And then I do like a yoga to kind of stretch things out and then do a long run on the weekends. And so, so that's what I do. I look at the calendar and I actually put it in. So like every Saturday, and I block it as well. Being like, okay, no, my Saturday morning, like I'm running it like this weekend, I'm doing 32 kilometers, but that's like 20 miles. And so I blocked my entire Saturday morning. Like I think I'll probably get done at like noon or 1 o'clock. And then I'm going to just be on the couch. So like I just, and you have to think about that stuff too when you're making plans with friends or like having a life. Like, okay, like, will I be able to walk after that? Or is it actually best for me to keep my feet up and make no plans that day? And there's also the nutrition side of it as well, right? What am I eating? What am I buying? What am I going to, because when you run a marathon, it's so different, or like an ultra, it's so different from any other races. Because if you do a 5K, 10K, a half marathon, you don't really need to eat with those. Like you kind of want to give yourself electrolytes and water, but like you could like just survive off of that. You could still do good times. But with a marathon, you actually have to nourish your body. You have to eat, or else you literally won't be able to continue on. And so, and then that's a whole thing. Like, okay, I have to train myself to eat and run. Right? I'm just like, okay. And then like, what is going to go good in my body? Right? Like, do I like gels? Do I prefer candies? Do I want nuts and seeds? Do I eat? And then kind of like testing all those things and like and then that's even a bit of a project too. Like, okay, is it every 30 minutes? Is it every 45 minutes? Water, electrolytes, which electrolytes do it? Yeah. And then even you want to carry everything with you too. So you have to like sort of train your body to do that. And there's so much planning to it that goes along with it. So yeah, really structuring it all out and thinking like, what do you want to test things with? Because you never want to do anything new on race day. That is the biggest mistake I think anybody can make. You want to be everything you've worn, everything you've eaten, everything it's all,
It's all tested and true. And that's where people, like, again, this parallel with entrepreneurship, and that people are getting on the webinar for the first time, using new tech that they've never used without a plan, without having tried to do the talk, play with the slides, all these things, or planning it on top of, oh, I've got guests in my house, or, my neighbor's having a party and playing loud music. Like, not thinking through all these other things. I think the marathon really does, or any kind of long training, you set yourself up the same way in your business, that you have to balance your life. You have to make sure you're getting good nutrition and hydration, and that you don't leave everything to race day, to the big event, to then just hope, and cross your fingers that it goes well. And so the more you can help people plan and chunk that a little bit at a time over the weeks and say, this works, that didn't, and then pick a new plan as you figure out what does. It's so fantastic. And I'm sure you see that a lot with your clients.
Yeah, totally. And I think that one big thing is with all of it, whether you're running a marathon or, doing a launch for the first time, you got to have support and people to help you along the way. So even when we're talking about like testing things out, have a practice session. Practice your webinar, your workshop, or whatever it is with, some coach buddies that you have, and get them to help you, to give you feedback, because sometimes you think an activity is going to work really well and it kind of doesn't gel. Or maybe you have a glaring typo that you've looked at 100 times, like you can't see it anymore, right? And they're like, you spelled that word wrong, and it's like big and bold. And, your friends will just kind of help you with that. And then they're going to be patient. You're like, wait, I don't know the tech here. Like, how does this work? How do I do a breakout room? Or and test it with people and, because that you're going to get their love and support and their guidance and their feedback to make it even better when you actually do the real. And then even when you are doing the real webinar, have someone there help you too. Have someone come there, be like your little tech host, right? They let people in for you. They tap in the chat. They like put links in for you, and just kind of make it, they mute people. They make it run smoother for you. So you don't have to worry about all that. All you have to focus on is delivering your content and providing value and inviting people into your program.
I love this. I love all the fun parallels we have together. I love the work that you do to help entrepreneurs be more successful and think through the things that maybe are challenging, and give them the support to know that, again, you just need to do a little bit at a time, learn a little bit, get good at it, and then you can keep doing the next thing. I'm excited because I've got, my new Mindset in Motion program that'll be kicking off in October, probably right as this podcast goes out, and find ways that we can collaborate, and really help also give that support that entrepreneurs stay healthy throughout their journey and that they continue to train. I know it's been great for us and the other community that we're working out with is to get us all moving a little bit and out of our offices and doing a little bit more. So just loving all the cool stuff that we've collaborated on this year. And I know there's a lot more to go. But before you know it, time is up and we have to sign off. But I know people are going to want to get to know you and learn more about your services because this is a highly needed thing for so many entrepreneurs. So let us know where they can find you and let's tell them a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me if you want to look at me up on social media is my LinkedIn profile. So it's just Elisa Boogaerts. Yeah, it's there on the screen. And I often do posts inviting you to me. I do run monthly workshops myself. So you always see a post there. So you can come and join one of those, see what I'm all about and even learn a bit about like how to plan and how to get those backend systems set up. So we learn about that in the workshop. And my podcast, when I first, it's funny, my coaching journey, I started as a health coach and that was like the first certification that I got because that was just my love. And then I got more into life coaching and helping people with their confidence and really building up their self-confidence. And then it's kind of morphed into now this launch planning. And so because I don't talk about the confidence stuff as much anymore, but I love it. And I love like the coaches that work in that really mindfulness field. So I launched a podcast called Authentically Elisa, where it's all about authentic living and like, sort of living in your purpose and how to do that. And so Nikki's going to come on and be my guest in a couple of months. And or maybe it might even come out around the same time this one does. And it'll be so great. Yeah. So if you're interested, Authentically Elisa, you can find it Spotify and Apple, iHeartRadio, and YouTube.
Beautiful. We'll drop the links in the show notes so everybody can find you and find the podcast and so much more. I know we're going to do some more collaboration and I absolutely love that. And hopefully, again, we'll get back in person soon. Either I'll head to Vancouver to come hang out or maybe you'll come down to Chicago. Well, if you guys have loved this episode, I would greatly appreciate a like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell, whatever the things are on the podcast platform where you are catching this episode. And if you'd like to catch the next one, we are about to hit episode 100, a huge milestone for Stand Up and Stand Out. So excited. And you can catch us where all the cool kids hang out, the Do Podcast. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening and celebrating our 8th season and 100th episode. We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Please don't forget to share your thoughts on this topic with us across our social channels. You can find them at the NikkiGreen360.com. TTFN, this is Nikki signing off.